You should have coordinated. I have an ACL shirt. All righty. Where are we?
Yeah, I think we're all here.
I
Five
have one
one.
from the TV show.
Right.
Yeah.
Hi, Clemson's.
David. David
Morning,
Sherman.
Dave.
Norman.
Morning.
5-1, Dave Sherman. Ace of
Hello.
Canada.
It looks like we got everyone in here. We're live on YouTube. Got everything ready to roll. And are we waiting on Doug? Is Doug with us today?
Mm-hmm.
Wait for
Hey,
Doug.
Dave, Doug, you got us on this better today. 1, 2.
We
Nice
hear,
one.
Yeah.
We can hear you live.
There's Doug.
I'm well.
Doug is at the stage door.
While we're waiting on Doug, if you have yet to change your chat settings, if you go down to chat, you can change it to all panelists and attendees. That helps us kind of filter through questions and be able to address everyone's questions accordingly. It helps us get to everything. So, and that way we can see the whole conversation. So if you have yet to change your chat settings, please change it to all panelists and attendees to help us ask questions there. Looks like Doug is jumping on. So to get this conversation going, we'll get it started. Welcome everyone to episode number 45. I can't believe we've made it all the way to 45, working our way to almost 50 episodes since back in March. We wanted to open the conversation, keep tour management fluid, and kind of push a new generation of tour managers if we can and kind of give back. So thank you and welcome new viewers and people who've been with us from the beginning. Today, we're going to be talking about health and wellness. There is always a point in tour where we hit the wall. What we can do to anticipate that and get ahead of it, there are people in the industry that can help with strategies and support, how we can apply this to our lives while in the industry is on pause. So today, Adrian's going to introduce our guests and we're going to rock right into health and wellness today. So on to you, Adrian.
Good morning, everybody. Healthy and well Monday to you. Good morning to everybody in the group that continues to join us. Lurin White checking in. I see you, buddy. It's lovely to have you, brother. So we're going to just go around to our guests this morning and have you guys all introduce yourselves. Let us know how you got into the business, how you got where you are, and what your current situation in the mental health and wellness community is, so that our guests can get to know who you are. Ace, we're going to go to you first, my friend, from our friends in the apartment upstairs in Canada.
Hey, thanks for having me here. Really appreciate it. Like I said, I'm Ace. I'm from Canada. I am a co-founder of a nonprofit organization up here called Over the Bridge. I started off my music career as a local drummer. Then I started booking all our shows, and I accidentally became our tour manager and agent and everything else. Once my band wanted to get real jobs, I wasn't quite ready to. So I went on to become a tour manager. Sort of, I don't want to say I fell into it, but I when the opportunities came, I took it. From there, I was on the road, and I lived the party. I was, as early tour manager stuff and all that. And as tours went on, I just started noticing a lot of friends and family struggling, with addictions and mental health and how to manage it and cope with it. And then I had a personal issue where my mom has some mental health problems, and I had to be next to her for a bunch of electric shock treatments. And so that really got me on the mental health advocacy thing. And whenever I was on the road with an artist, they were very supportive, and I realized the need that the music industry needed, the road crew and, people in the offices even, because this is a industry of unusual stressors and it's an unusual life. So, and here I am. Thank you.
Awesome. I have had the pleasure of working on a couple of wellness and mental health panels with you previously in person, and I know that you're really connected to what you talk about. Can you give us a little bit about Over the Bridge in a nutshell?
Yeah, no problem. Over the bridge, what we do is we run. Although we're based in Canada, we do have online support groups. We have a Facebook group with over 1,100 members, and we do Zoom check-in groups or mental sound check groups twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern, which would be 11 a.m. PST. So what we do, we not only advocate, but we help members of our industry sort of get through the murky waters of the mental health system up here. So,
And you guys are a nonprofit, yeah?
correct.
That your first time negotiating those waters?
Oh yeah, I had no idea. I became an addictions counselor a few years ago, 5 years ago now, because I'd seen members, musicians and crew guys struggle with addiction. I wish I had better tools. So I went back to school, became an addictions counselor, worked at a number of programs in and around my city in between tours and whenever they would take me. And it led to me starting the Over the Bridge peer support group because I was running a bunch of those, and someone suggested, hey, maybe this should become a nonprofit. And I said, okay. A week later, we got approved by our government, and I was like, okay, time to learn. So it's been just celebrated a 3-year anniversary, and every day it's a learning and learning curve. There's new challenges, and but without those challenges, it wouldn't make it fun. So,
Indeed. Thank you, my friend.
thank you.
Okay, over to Paul and Courtney. Tell us about yourselves and the Roadie Clinic.
Good afternoon. I'm Paul. That's Courtney, obviously. We've been partners in crime in the business for 22 years, doing shows in college back in the day, and moved up through van and trailer tours and into bus touring, country world. Slid over to broadcast. I worked at Jimmy Fallon and late night for a while, some SNL. And from there into the pop world, Justin Timberlake, Drake, Alicia Keys, John Legend. Mostly monitors, some front house, some broadcast, some studio. But yeah, we do events together. We've been married 17 years, and have just tried to be a strong industry couple through that whole time together, focusing on our marriage along the way and devising techniques and such like that. Also, just in the past year, we started working on a nonprofit. Ace, I understand all those pains.
You understand him. I understand your pain. He's not done.
We'll talk after.
We started a nonprofit called The Clinic, a roadie advocacy group, because we've been, like he said, 20 years listening to our colleagues and our peers struggling with the same things that we struggle with. We almost divorced on multiple occasions. I think we're through it now. I think we've figured it out at this point. But I was just tired of watching our people struggle. And the one thing that always happened when Paul would leave for tour, something would go wrong. I'd be in the hospital, or I'd get into a car accident, or. There was no place for me to turn. There wasn't a support group out there for the people back home. And so our vision for this is healthy road life, healthy home life. So we care as much about the people on the road doing the hard jobs as we do about the families back home. And we want to be a support network for both of those. And so that's what we're doing.
Amazing. So there was a turning point for you guys in 2008. Can you talk a little bit about when things got critical for you guys?
Absolutely. So this was back when healthcare wasn't an affordable option for those of us on the freelance lifestyle. So I had to work a full-time job, and I was actually starting a new division at a company called Mask Sound. It's a Broadway rental house in the business. And Paul was off on tour with John Legend on his first tour gig, on his first theater gig. And so they were going from city to city night after night. There wasn't a lot of layover. There wasn't a lot of stop in between. It was just go, go, go. And he was gone for about 9 months straight. And we rarely saw each other. And when we spoke, Paul would essentially like, hey, how you doing? I miss you. How's it going? Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh, great. Okay. So this is what's happening at home. Oh, super. Well, it was was pulling teeth just to have a conversation. And so by the time he got home, I didn't know him anymore. He was a complete stranger to me, and he became a catalyst for massive panic attacks. There wasn't a day that he came home, because at this point he had left the John Legend tour and went straight into working for Jimmy Fallon. So he would show up at like 8 o'clock at night, and the second he walked in the door, I'd have a panic attack, and I'd have to go lock myself in a room until I could come down from that. And I didn't know how to at that point. I also didn't know at that point that I had generalized anxiety disorder. So I was trying to maintain all of that. This one over here has bipolar, and at the time his medicine was awful. It was comatose. And we just lost it. We broke down. It was either we get some intense counseling immediately, or our marriage was over, and what we had built together was going to be done. And so that's when we first started figuring out how to communicate better, how to love each other better, how to work through our issues with therapy, how to get meds straightened out, how to handle boundaries both within our family, and then the boundaries we had to set with our friends, because they didn't understand. When Paul comes home, I'm going to be selfish. He's mine. You don't get to see him. And that, setting boundaries. And just constantly working hard to get to where we are now. So we still struggle. Of course, everybody struggles, but we're both fully medicated now in our therapy, and we feel stronger than ever. And we're ready to help others through the same thing.
Tell us a little bit about the Rhody Clinic.
So we bought a building because that's what sane people do. We found a really peaceful, quiet, welcoming, warm place in Niles, Michigan. We've been coming here for the last 5 years. Anytime Paul was off tour, we immediately come right here. It's right in between Chicago and Detroit off of 80-90. It's a beautiful small town, and there was a great building on Main Street, and we just felt like we had to buy it. But when we bought it, we knew that it wasn't for us. We knew that it was for our community. We knew it was going to be a safe place for learning and for healing. And that's exactly what the clinic will become when we get our doors open. Right now, we're doing virtual we're helping people find therapists. We're helping people with legal counsel. We're helping people with unemployment paperwork and Medicaid and their resumes. We're doing as much as we can before our doors are open. We're working on securing our funding to get the building complete. When it's done, we'll have 5 individual lofts where people can come and stay and get the help that they need. We'll have 2 soundproof therapy suites where we'll be partnering with Backline.care and using their therapy network, but we'll also have a therapy network here locally. We're going to be working on financial literacy programs, because a lot of you guys just leave high school and go straight on a bus. So everything from how to balance your checkbook to how to think towards retirement, because there's going to come a day where you cannot travel full time. And so what does that look like?
Word.
Yeah.
Right? How do you get off the road? How do you plan for that? And then just some basic care. If you just need to come to catch your breath and to get your head straight before you go back out, come on over. If you've got a toxic bus on your tour and you're driving by and you guys need like a group therapy session, stop on in. We're not forming our programs within a certain box. We are open to change and to growth. And as people speak into us, we will continue to develop programs that are best for the community as a whole.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for, past, current, and what's coming. Much needed. Thank you. Janine, good morning to you, the Tour Life podcast. Tell us about yourself.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh man. So
Give me that pink hair. Give me that pink
yeah.
hair.
So I dyed my hair pink because I was going through COVID. So no,
Yeah.
just kidding. But yeah, so I got into media and the music industry and everything back when I worked at WBEZ. So that's the Chicago NPR station. I actually didn't even know what public radio was when I was recruited to work there. I just, I was thrusted into the public radio world, and I ended up falling in love with the music. And I also ended up falling in love with storytelling. So storytelling naturally from WBZ, because that's your natural NPR stuff. But I also was lucky to work with Vocalo, which was our music station. So a lot of my clients were all music venue owners. And so I actually started putting together showcases and things. So I saw the backstage of things at that point, which was really great, just kind of seeing artists when they're starting out. And then when they come back around town, they're bigger and everything's different and they go from venue to venue. So that was always really fun. And while I was there, I ended up running into someone for the second time. Actually, I have a tattoo that says Ran because I ran into him twice. And then we ended up dating for 5 years. So he toured for a living. So he was an audio engineer, still is. And we had a rough time. It was funny because when we first started seeing each other, he basically just invited me out to ACL, which you guys joked around ACL. And I was reckless. So I was like, sure, I'll go with a stranger and I'll, go wherever. And next thing I knew, he left, he ended up moving in. And so we were together for 5 years. And at that time, it didn't really seem like 5 years simply because he was gone most of the time. So he was touring about 8 months out of the year. And it was weird because, we would get along for about a week at a time and then it would get really difficult. And long story short, it didn't end up working. And I started to get more into health and wellness around the time when we were not making it work. And I started to realize and really look into myself and start to analyze the situation. And I realized that I didn't really understand him and I didn't really understand my place in the relationship. And I didn't think we understood each other. And I realized that a lot of that had to do with simply just having a lifestyle like the kind that you guys have. And for me, the music industry was all fun and games. I wasn't working when he would take me out on tour with him. I was just having fun and like going to the show. And I didn't really get to understand what it took to do what you guys do. And I started a podcast. Yeah. So anyway, I ended up starting a podcast and my Siri is talking to me. Sorry. I ended up starting a podcast and the podcast is where I discovered kind of what the whole thing was, how I could help you guys. I started to hear your stories and it's been a great way for you guys to talk to each other and get it out. So anyway, yeah, that's it. That's me.
Can you tell us a little bit about when you made the decision to actually formally become a certified personal trainer and become a wellness coach? Because you did more than just start a podcast. You actually informed yourself and took on some professional accreditation and became learned, as we say.
So around the time that we broke up, that was it. I started taking care of myself. And so I enrolled at the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. I learned about holistic wellness. And that's what it was. I also became a personal trainer because I figured that was the best way to do it. And I know we're going to talk a little bit later about how food is connected to mental health. And that's what really, really got me going because I know that it's a great solution for a lot of people.
Right. Amazing. Thank you, my love. Good morning, Dave Sherman.
Good morning.
Tell us about yourself.
A bit of a background in the music industry, a couple of different jobs. Service in college radio with vinyl. I was a video commissioner. I was managing studios, worked with some baby bands.
In the Northeast mostly?
Yeah, give or take. I mean, there was a division of Warner Brothers at one point, which was national and international back in the mid-90s. And then in 2000, in between all of that, in 99, I got sober. Back in the music industry for a year in there. And then ended up in addictions counseling, which I did for about a decade, in treatment facilities, became a certified addictions counselor, and worked as a primary counselor for about 10 years. But from those contacts in the industry, I started getting referrals in at night and on the weekends. I started doing a little bit of touring on the weekends, a little bit of group communication with bands.
Sober coaching?
Started working my way towards sober coaching, which in 2011-ish, 12-ish became a full-time gig. Did some columns for Alternative Press that went pretty viral. Ended up on a bunch of podcasts with some musicians, Jeff Rickley from Thursday, and just word of mouth, and it just became a full-time gig. So it's mostly individual sessions online. I tour a couple, 3 times a year for anywhere from 4 to 8 to 12 weeks. And I do a lot of podcasts with cool people.
Awesome. Can you give us a snapshot of sort of how you see addiction overall? And this is a stupid question. It's not a stupid question. I'm asking this is a rhetorical question because we already know the answer, but I want to hear it. Can you tell us in your estimation, a snapshot of what you think, how you think addiction and touring, the roles?
Okay, that's a big thing. I think that the exact same qualities that make you want to exist in the music industry are more than likely the same personality qualities that steer you in the direction of addiction. We talk about how an addict is an egomaniac with low self-esteem. We tend to think about ourselves all day long, but we don't think very highly of ourselves. And the whole idea of the attention you're getting, that external validation, the needing something outside of you to feel good, they all parallel. The entire idea of the music industry being basically run like a pirate ship for the past 50 years, and I think it's just up until the last couple of years that people are finally waking up and going, things are really not healthy in this environment. And I think finally people are taking a look at it.
Pirate ship
I've
is
worked with
such a-
managers that really want to care about their artists, but they don't know how. They have no experience whatsoever in terms of addiction, and they're enabling them without realizing they're doing it. So it
Awesome.
seems like
That pirate ship analogy is perfect.
David, I have a quick
Yeah.
question. When you said you tour a couple times a year, are you touring as in a counselor capacity with a specific artist?
No, I'm a singer-songwriter. No, I'm kidding. No, as an addictions professional, I go on tour. Yeah.
Amazing.
You
Okay,
don't hear me sing. I'm awful.
MJ, over to you. We're gonna, or
Dave,
is that where we're going?
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
MJ.
Dave, picking up from that thought, in the past, we talked about how there has been a stigma around mental health issues and admitting you have any issues surrounding mental health. I mean, I know, for
Are
me,
you crazy on the pirate ship?
there's crazy on the pirate ship. For me, I actually, this year is the first time I ever really talked about this because I just thought it might be useful to some people. With near the beginning of my career, I was diagnosed with dysthymia, which is like it's like a low persistive, depressive disorder, which so like if normal people are at a 10, you're like a 7 all the time.
Yeah.
So it just means, everybody has a depressive time in their life and you can crash a little harder, than normal people, if anybody's normal. But I never talked about it. I had really early in the game, I was fortunate to be diagnosed, have strategies, which I think helped me excel actually, because I was able to sort of deal with crappy times. But I never really talked about it because, to be honest, I was afraid I would get fired or people would think I couldn't do my job.
Sure.
And it's only just in like the last year that I've talked about it because I realized like, well, maybe that might help somebody else who's like dealing with it and being like, oh, that actually can help you. So what do you see, other than that kind of thing, what's changing around it? Like, when did you see like a turning point? Or has it just been kind of an ongoing thing?
Yeah, I think it's an ongoing thing. I think that it goes in cycles, it comes and goes, because somebody prominent will suddenly talk about, I'm bipolar, and they'll do it on a big interview show, and they'll talk about getting help, and there'll be a big resurgence, or some prominent figure will get sober. I think with the internet, it's just so much more is out there than there was before, and with social media, I think a lot more people are talking about it, and it's a lot easier to connect with people that get you than it used to be. It was this big unspoken thing that was just under the radar, and I don't know anybody healthy in the music industry. No offense, I'm sure you people are all doing great, but the whole nature of it, it's just this is not something that draws healthy people to it. Why would you want to live on a bus with 11 guys for 8 months a year? Nobody would want to do that under any circumstances, except unless you got some issues. So, was anybody talking about it? No. And one of the things I find interesting, because I get brought in, I ran groups for a lot of years. I get brought in sometimes to help bands communicate. Once they start talking, it turns out everybody was thinking the same thing, and nobody, was ready to talk about it. As soon as they did, there's this big collective sigh of relief. Like, like somebody said that you get out of high school, you just get on a tour bus. Nobody taught the coping skills to just, we were talking about yesterday using your words, just simple as this is how I'm feeling today. Just a simple emotional check-in with everybody can make a world of difference, and nobody's doing that yet. Just some basic coping skills would make such a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And Paul, as we talked about, you deal with bipolar disorder and managing that on tour. But in the past, were you open about it on tour? Or was there a time where you weren't?
Most recently, it's been the past 2 years that we've really started. I mean, mostly because we started having crews over to our house when we lived in New York and just having dinners where Courtney would cook and most of those, we barely said a word. It would just be 4 hours of someone dumping and eyes wide open, like, whoa, this is for real. And then like one-on-one, more and more, either people would ask if they knew me well enough, or we would just bring it up.
I always made it a point early in his career, whether he knew it or not, to let somebody that we could trust within the camp know that he's bipolar and understand that he's medicated. And this was 16 years ago when he was just getting started and when he was just getting on his meds. And sometimes he'd fall asleep at his console. That's how comatose those meds made him. So people knew about it in private, and it's just been in the recent, like he said, 2 to 4 years. We just don't care. I
Yeah.
guess part of it is too that we had the safety of the level of gig he had gotten to. That if somebody didn't want him because he was bipolar, well, they're just missing out on his mix, so we don't really care anyways.
I think that's a really important point. And,
Yeah.
and I've experienced situations where a crew member or a musician has come to me and asked and advised me of a condition, mental or physical, and asked me to keep it completely to myself. And obviously, as a tour manager, my responsibility is to respect their wishes. But what I would say to them is, if I am able to let key people know on this crew, we will be able to support you better and respond to your condition better, and be more aware of it, and head issues off at the past. Does that tally with your kind of experience, Paul and Courtney?
No, please go for it.
It's been a mix, because I've been sliding in and out of different. I've been lucky enough to slide in and out of quite a few different camps, either filling in or full time. I think it comes down, so far it's become down to a case by case thing, really.
When you've got a hideous tour manager, you're not going to go to them. I mean, and there are some nasty people out on the road. Don't go thinking that just because we're all kind and telling you about all of our stuff that's
Right.
Yeah.
how our industry operates. So when people are as toxic as they can possibly be, we're not going to go to them and be like, P.S. we've got mental health issues, and just aware. It's more
Yeah.
something we then rely internally on each other, or maybe Paul's developed really close friendships with his tech, and maybe that's the person that we let in on it. But it really is, like he said, case by case. But there are certain artists, there are certain tours, it's not worth it.
And the tech thing is huge. I mean, obviously, finding that other person on the I mean, I hear this in the AA side as well. You don't know until later on about somebody, and because it's a scary thing to let that cat out of the bag. But definitely the techs I've had in the past few years, I've become really close with, both professionally, because we lean on each other the whole day, but just to discuss stuff. And the best part is when I'm open and honest right from the start. If we're doing a shop prep, I'll mention life, or over lunch during a shop prep, and by the first week of the run, I'm usually getting questions from different areas, like, hey, I heard. And that's when the real work starts with either a guitar tech that has reached out, or my tech as well. I mean, that's when the real work with a friend starts, who's your colleague.
Oh, Ace.
Yeah, sorry. As the tour manager, what I do is when I get involved with a new camp, whether I'm filling in, or if it's a one-off, not so much, but if I'm filling in for a good amount or whatever, I do send a questionnaire out to everybody, like contact information and all that, as well as allergies and things like that. And I do ask if anybody has any mental health issues that we should know about, just so as mentioned earlier, it's like, so we do know how to appropriately respond.
That's an interesting question, Alex. Hi, Alex. We have Alex asking that question, and I see 5-1 answered.
Oh.
Yeah, I think I wanted to just kind of go around on that one a second, because that's a HIPAA issue. And 5-1, we generally will have a questionnaire on tour. We want to know about health issues. We want to know about allergies, and if there are food allergies, that's really important, so that we can adjust catering. Or allow for, heads up, this has nuts or dairy's here or what have you. But the mental health thing is a little bit different. General consensus from our panelists, I think, is you can possibly ask about health issues, or maybe ambiguously saying anything else about your well-being you'd like us to know. Right, Dave? Because is it, and this is a question that I had, is it an actual HIPAA issue to ask specifically that you're aware of about mental health issues in a personal questionnaire?
Well, technically, nobody on tour would be bound by HIPAA. I mean, that's for a doctor or professional.
Okay. True.
So it doesn't enter. I'll give you an example. For me, I think it's up to the artist for even the tour to know why I'm there. Like, I went out on a big tour, and on day one, when everybody got introduced, I was the wellness coach, which would have been nice to know going in. Nobody told me I was the wellness coach. I didn't even know what that was. But, and for like the first 10 days or so, people are like, so what do you do again? And if you're the wellness coach, why are you chain smoking with the horn section? And it wasn't really my place to say, actual question. I was like, production manager just need to shut the fuck up. It was one of those deals. But like by week 2, the artist and I were disappearing every day for an hour and coming back. And they're like, oh, we know what this guy's doing. But it wasn't my story to tell.
Right.
So it's one of those where you kind of get a feel for it, but I don't think you can throw somebody under the bus. I think
No, but can you ask, really the question is about that specific pointed question on a questionnaire,
I wouldn't put it in print. I would say if there's anything else you want us to know, let us know. That I would keep it vague. I think that's probably the best way.
And for me, like, it just, in my situation, it's not like with Paul, like I'm medicated because I found ways like, to work with it. So it's like, I would probably not tell somebody because it doesn't affect my job. But if I, need to take a minute to myself or have a phone call, like I don't, I feel like it's up to the person, but it is an ADA thing. That's the thing. And that's where it becomes a little gray, because you can ask legally for accommodations, at least in America. Right.
Well, like if you're just, so if you're applying for a job at a treatment facility or rehab, they legally can't ask you if you're in recovery. Like that's a complete violation.
Interesting.
5-1, what you got?
Yeah, I think you're going to get into legal issues. Also, if you ask someone and you have it in print, like Dave says, that what if that person gets fired? They could use that. Well, you knew I had these mental issues, so you're firing me for these, because of the mental issues that I have. So I think it's a very fine line you have to walk, and you have to be safe. So I think you shouldn't put it in print, and you should have someone, hey, like Paul and Courtney says, hey, I have some of these issues, because I've had people come to me on tour and says, hey, just giving you a little bit of a heads up before the tour starts, I'm going through this right now. And then you have that in the back of your mind, and you can kind of adjust to that. But asking someone outright, I think, is kind of sets a dangerous precedent.
And thank you for doubling back on, we've touched, just a touch point for those of you who've been with us previously, is just having a buddy, a little bit of a buddy system situation on tour. There's always going to be, you're going to have a thunder buddy, like we know, whoever your homie is, that you just want to make sure somebody knows what's up with you, so that if you're off or not feeling well, someone has your back, and it isn't, doesn't escalate if it doesn't have to, and it's not everybody's business. You got it. You got your safety zone. Thank you guys for having this, for fleshing that out. I think that's about as important as the rest of what we're chatting about today. Back to you, MJ. Thank you.
Actually, I was going to hand it off to Doug to go a little deeper into what Janine touched for a second on, which is food.
You alluded to it earlier, and food on tour. Let's take catering aside. Let's take arena catered tours aside, because it is possible to, if you're with a good caterer, to eat healthy every single day from breakfast to dinner, if you're careful. But let's take that aside for a second. And one of the things that you will hear from people on the road all of the time, and I know this because I've been guilty of saying it, is that it's impossible. It can be impossible to eat healthy on tour. And I don't say that anymore because it's not true, in my opinion. It is challenging. It can be challenging to eat healthy on tour, but it is possible if you're prepared. And, Janine, I wanted to talk to you about this. I think we all can agree and acknowledge the physical benefits of eating well, or the adverse physical effects of not eating well. But I think I wanted to talk about the mental effects of not eating well, and how important that can be. And credit David yesterday, who said that the stomach is your second brain, which I love, and I would love to hear you explain a bit about why that is.
Yeah, and actually we got really excited when he brought that up, and I was like, yes, that's exactly why. So the gut actually has about 6 pounds of bacteria that isn't even us. And those are the bugs that you're feeding, and they control the way that your gut is able to process foods and therefore hormones. So we actually have more neurotransmitters in our gut than we do in our spine. And we have more, actually more than we have in our brains. And then we have more nerve endings in our gut than we have in our spine. So it literally is our second brain. And there's a nerve that goes from the gut to the brain. So what you eat affects how well that process can happen. So if you eat things that don't allow the communication to happen smoothly, you end up really, with inflammation. And so something that I really wanted to get across to you guys before we talk about anything else is why this is important. So inflammation is kind of like, think of it like when your joint hurts. So if you have inflammation in your joint, you end up with arthritis and it hurts, right? If you have inflammation in your throat, you end up with a sore throat and it hurts. Well, when you have inflammation in your brain, it doesn't hurt because we don't actually have sensory nerve endings there. So what happens is it shows up in other ways. So with ADD, depression, anxiety, OCD, all sorts of mental issues, as much as dementia and autism. So those are the things that happen when you have inflammation. And so that's why it's really, really important to figure out a way to keep your gut healthy.
Interesting. So, I something that I'm sure we can all identify with on the road is having that post meal crash. You're tired, you're exhausted, you've been on the road for 3 weeks, you've just been at catering and probably put down 2,500 calories, and it's 8 p.m., doors are open, and you're just head on the desk, exhausted, and you cannot, I guess what I'm getting at is there is an equivalent mental reaction to that physical reaction, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, what you're describing is basically a sugar crash. So, there are people who will say, oh my gosh, at this time, like at 2 or 3 o'clock every day, I get really exhausted. And, as soon as I have a Coke, like I feel great. Well, that's probably because they had a lot of carbs and sugar for breakfast. And at that point, their blood sugar dropped so low that what they're experiencing is hypoglycemia, which means that their blood sugar is just slow. So the Diet Coke the Coke that they just had brings their sugar back up. And so then that's what gives you that energy. The goal in wellness is to not be on that roller coaster. So because you guys have such stressful jobs, really, you want to make sure that your body is able to stay in a balanced state so that you're not constantly only in your outside world battling a bunch of ups and downs as well as your internal world.
Right. Interesting.
Cool.
It's like a game changer.
Total game changer.
Like that paradigm shift is so interesting because anyway, sorry, moving on, Dave, to that point, you will know that writers tend to follow a particular pattern. People steal the writers from other artists and they tend to stock them with similar items. Chips and dip, candy, more chips, snacks, things that are easy, and it makes sense, things that go in the dressing rooms, things that go on the bus. Have to, there are reasons why those are popular, but that kind of junk food is addictive, right?
Yeah.
And it's we consider it comfort food, but you yesterday said that there are ways to train your brain to get comfort from other types of food. Can you speak
Well,
to
you
that?
can train your brain to do anything. You know, and there are fast food chains and there are chips that are scientifically designed to trigger certain neural pathways that make you crave grease and fat and salt. You know, and the consistency even is scientifically designed to do that. I like Doritos. They are literally designed so that I continue eating Doritos. It works for me. It's like my only vice, that and Coke. But yeah, and so what you need to do is get it out of your system and then find healthier things that, you know, and any new habit takes literally 21 days to create a new neural pathway. So if you force yourself to do something different for 21 days in a row, that'll be the new normal. You know, if it's celery sticks, personally, I don't like celery, but I could get used to it if I had to. You know, there's so many healthy snacks you can eat that aren't going to cause, like Janine was saying, that roller coaster, because I'm guilty of it all the time. You know, I have a couple of coffees in the morning and by lunch I'm dying, which is still a lot better than smoking crack, but you know.
And David, isn't it important to also point out that, and we talked about it yesterday briefly, you know, why the gut is important, but it's also because 90% of serotonin or more is created in the gut. And serotonin is what Zoloft works on. And right now, you guys, there is a Zoloft shortage because of COVID-19.
I had no idea that the digestive system had anything to do with serotonin.
I didn't either.
90% or
But
more.
as soon as you think about it, you eat McDonald's, 20 minutes later, you feel like shit. I anticipate your letters from McDonald's. You know, but you know, you eat a salad and you feel perfectly fine for the rest of the day because you're not having that crazy, you know, up and down serotonin blast.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, as lay people, you know, we hear a lot about all of the things that we talk about. You know, I'm a big proponent of gut health. I have people on probiotics all the time, and I'm a kombucha person and fermented foods, and I try to maintain my own health through gut health. And that's for, you know, I never, in all of sort of studying around that, and you hear your gut is central to your physical health. I have never once heard serotonin and gut health in the same snippet before. That's a really fascinating, that's fascinating to know, because that's literally your up and down switch.
It's like 50% of your mood is dictated by what you put in your body.
Yeah, exactly. One last point. So actually, and I kind of want people to understand what the microbiome is. So the microbiome are all of the bugs that live on your body. Okay. 6 pounds of them just live in your gut. But what's really important to understand is that there's a battle happening in your gut every single day. And every time you eat a meal, you're either feeding the good bugs or you're feeding the bad bugs. Okay. So it's really important to feed the good bugs with as much fiber and greens and just whole foods, vegetables. So another point that I want to get across is that it's not about just constantly being perfect. It's about figuring out what you can add to your plate in order to also feed the good bugs. Because yes, we live in reality, we live in the real world, and it's not always going to be perfect, but you always have to be thinking about those good bugs that are fighting the battle inside you and back them up, feed them.
Can you give really quick, because we're going to move on, but I would really love to know 3 good things on your plate to feed the good bugs.
Greens,
okay.
Dark leafy greens, always just throw those on there. I literally had pizza the other day, just throw greens on top.
Okay.
Drink water.
Okay.
And colorful foods. So try to get as many different colors. Berries are great, things like that.
Thank you.
I feel like this is a perfect segue into, I mean, we're staying on the food topic just shortly here, but Ace, I'd like to pass it over to you to discuss, like, say you don't really have the luxuries and you're a starting band, you're in a 15-passenger van, like that's the kind of touring you're doing. You might not be getting that much PD. So health isn't really going to be an option for the most part. You're really going to kind of take leadership around it. What's your thoughts on, you know, baby bands starting out and, you know, have to kind of navigate food that way?
Well, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. You know, during my early touring years, you know, I was with metal bands and all this who the, you know, second to playing, the primary reason is to go out there and party, and nutrition is probably way down on the list. So, you end up staying up a little later at night and cutting into your drive time, which would cut into your, preparation time. As Doug mentioned yesterday, it's really important to, prepare your day, have someone who's like an advocate to eat healthy and to make those grocery store stops. I know that isn't necessarily a giant priority when you only have $15-20 a day per diem, but your dollar will get stretched further. And if you put all your monies together, you should be able to, if you got 5 guys at $100, that's a pretty good shopping day for anyone. So, my suggestion for that is, to bring your money together, make sure you got someone in the band who's an advocate, or hopefully there's someone in the band that advocates for that. Or else if you're eating out of gas stations and, trying to get those $4 fruit cup things, your PD's gone in no time flat, and you're going to feel like shit for the rest of the day. So, you got to remember why you're out there, and that's to play music and to play it at your best form. So you got to take care of yourself, or else, you're putting yourself behind the trailer even before it pulls away. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just jump in real quick because we chatted this yesterday, but I was on a sprinter tour with a band who, first thing they said to me when I got the job was, we want to eat healthy. So let's figure out Whole Foods stop every day, on the drive out of town. And I would say that eight times out of 10, we were able to pull into Whole Foods. And this was a low budget tour. It was a bus chasing tour, some long drives in the US and Canada. But, most days it was adding a half hour to our drive, and we would just get up an hour earlier in the morning and stop by the fresh food bar at Whole Foods. It might seem expensive there and then, but if you compare it to eating at Burger King, McDonald's all day, you can do breakfast and lunch in the same box and just keep it in the van with it. You don't need to keep it all day and overnight. And that worked really well for that tour.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd suggest get a nice little cooler, put it between the 2 front seats. You get mixed bags of salads for $3 or $4. As someone pointed out, the pre-cooked chicken, that feeds a few people so there's options, but the tricky part is making that time. And sometimes you're going to have to cut out your, a few of those partying hours at the end of the night to make sure you make time for that in the morning, or else, when you got a 7-hour drive and you only have 8 hours to do it, well, you got to get up a little bit earlier. So you got to go to bed a little bit earlier. So it's all part of that balance.
Yeah, really, really great points. And also would like to note that, like, don't, as a new and upcoming tour manager, don't be, I'm trying to think of the right word around it. Don't be afraid, but be very proactive in it. Like, if your artist, say your artist isn't really concerned about health, but make it an awareness, like bring it up to your artist, approach it. If, say, that's not the initiative, because we are there to appease our client. We do want to kind of build our tour around that. But it is us to kind of bring those options available, and say an artist isn't really looking to engage in that, or just has not brought it up. Always bring up health and be like, how do you want to cater? How do you want to do food? And like, these are options, and it might shift gears on how your team thinks about eating on tour, and how your artist thinks about eating on tour as well is important. So all really good points. But as we roll out of food, and I pass it off to 5-1, is there any small strategies across the board with our panelists that y'all have to eating healthy, even if it's on a small tour and they don't have catering? You have any little strategies that y'all have on the road that y'all can?
I brought up yesterday that on a tour that I did, we had all these buses, and we just agreed that we weren't going to do crappy like pizza or after show food. So I was the person that we were talking about. We'd send the runner out in the day to get a roast chicken, which you can get at like any deli. Threw that on the bus with like salads, different options, so that people could, put together a plate at night, or they could make a sandwich or a salad or whatever they wanted. And there was a little pushback at first, but honestly, within like 2 weeks, everybody loved it. And then we would do like once a week something special. Like, we were able to afford bringing out like a taco truck, but you could do like pizza once a week and make it a treat. But that went over so well. And people were like, I did notice a change in the energy level. Really, I mean,
I
I
never
loved
eat
it.
no-show food. This came up on the FITSE webinar as well. I don't think it's. I realize that people are working long days, but it's not natural to eat a bunch of junk food at that time of night at like midnight. You're just keeping your body fueled when you need to go to bed. I just train myself out of the habit of it, and what I would do is stock the rider with things like Cliff Bars, Lara Bars, things that are better fuel. And if I needed a bit of energy in at showtime, I would also make sure, go around the stations and make sure people have them in their work boxes and they have them to hand when they're on showtime and they can't get away to go to the catering, so that they can just eat a protein bar, eat a Cliff Bar, whatever it is, so they don't throw 1,500 calories at their body at midnight, 1 in the morning, when they're supposed to be getting ready to go sleep.
Protein bars and bananas all day. The bus is loaded with protein bars and
Be
bananas.
careful with those
Yeah.
protein bars though, because some of them
have a
are
lot of
just
sugar.
fancy. They're fancy candy bars. Some of them.
I also-
Actually, a lot of them.
I wanted to share just very quickly before we move on to 5-1, a strategy that I used on a previous tour that I had lots of buses and not a lot of money, unfortunately. So what we did was we made sure that they could get what they needed for bus stock. And sometimes that bus stock should include something you might like to have later on. Also, I made text groups for all of my buses. I made sure that where the after show was coming from had healthy options and veggie options for my veg people. And I would text them all and say, text you the shot of the menu. Here's the menu. Some people would just completely opt out because they might have a protein shake or maybe some bite that they got in the daytime on after show for their after show food. Like Doug said, they're not looking, these days people are more healthy. So they're looking for lighter options after show anyway. So they may opt out. They may decide to get a gut bomb if they're, feeling a heavy burger in that moment. Maybe they do that once a week, but it just gives people, it cuts out that herd ordering where now you dump in a whole shit ton of food off the bus in the parking lot before you roll out because you've herd ordered and not everyone is eating or wants that or is doing that. So you've eliminated waste, which is a huge thing that happens on tour. And you also now are catering a little bit to people's specific health needs and wants, dietary needs, and so on. Over to 5-1.
Dun, 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 dun. So, Courtney and Paul, yesterday, I'm going to address this question to you first. We know that this tour schedule is grueling, and we don't have a whole lot of time for personal time. What are some small things that we can do to kind of help each other? Because you spoke yesterday on Bieber's tour. You said that there were 6 divorces during that tour.
Divorces on their last tour. Mike, thank you. And 4 divorces on the Timberlake crew. That was between America and Europe. There were 4 divorces.
Are you guys having a mic issue again, maybe? No?
Hello?
There you go.
There we go.
Give it the gusto, Court.
6 divorces on Bieber, 4 on a 3-week break with Timberlake. 4 divorces. It's really communication is something that we're not all taught. We don't all understand. And so we try to get ahead of the game when it comes to our marriage. We put things in calendars based on the tour schedule. Like this day I'm going to be really crabby because I will have just come off of a show last night and right into another show in another city tomorrow. And so be nice, be kind, and know that I've got nothing left to give you. It really is. I mean, that's the game. How can we check in and make sure the other person feels loved still and appreciated and looked after? So we had tools. We had check in twice a day, whether that's text or a phone call, whatever that could be. And then when Paul had days off, we would have date nights where he would do like takeout for me, and I wouldn't know what was showing up at the door, and we'd do dinner and a movie over Skype. Just little things, but you can get wrapped up in the gig really easily and forget who's back home waiting on you. And so that's really what we focused on, is keeping our marriage protected.
You also had mentioned yesterday, Courtney, about like you had a time frame, like 3 to 4 p.m. that there would be no work and people need to.
So on Bieber's next tour, the plan so far is from 3 to 4 p.m. Nobody works. Everybody goes home or calls home, takes care of their business back at home. Yeah, that's a large tour, and so maybe they have the luxury to do that. But at the same time, that's a luxury. That's a large tour, and should they have the luxury? Probably not. Like, it's going to be a stretch for sure. It doesn't have to be an hour. It can be 10 minutes. It can be 15 minutes. But if you're in charge of the tour, it's a great idea just to know that every day, even if it's 15 minutes, I have a 15-minute break where nobody's expected to do anything except handle their own mental health or their family's issues, or helping your partner get that new tire replaced somehow by making a phone call. Whatever it is, 15 minutes.
And Janine, can you follow through on a couple of things that we can do to kind of take care of each other while we're on the road?
Ask questions. I mean, a lot of times we live our lives just waiting to say the next thing. We don't really listen. And so it's just really important to ask people how they are and ask them what's good. Don't ask them what's bad, because people tend to lean toward the bad. So yeah, just try to be good listeners.
Ace, do you want to chime in on this one?
Yeah, for sure. For me, there's a few things that I try to do, and that's, keep positive language. If someone says they're doing good, it's like, hey, how you doing? It's like, oh, doing good. Ask about that. And we get we're easily put into the cycle of, just vomiting out the negative stuff that's happened in our life. And that's not to say that's not important, but also we got to find that balance of what's good as well, or else that talk turns into negative self-talk, which, takes us back into a not so good place. So, try and get positive feedback from people as well on how they're doing. And at the end of the tours, what I like to do is, as we were talking about the dopamine and serotonin levels earlier, it's like when we're doing these long hauls or even a short run, whether you're a musician or a crew, our serotonin levels are, at a max. We're performing, we're doing shows for, hundreds or thousands of people. And so when we get home, we sort of go through this little post-tour serotonin drop about 3 or 4 days later. And so it's a good idea for everyone to sort of get together on a Skype call or whatever, just to check in with each other, see, like, because we're going to be riding high for those first couple days home, and then we're going to come down and do a crash. And because, life, we're back to normal life. We have normal expectations. We're on as opposed to when we're on the road, our roles in life are different as opposed to when we're at home. We're at home, we're, a family person or whatnot, versus on the road, we got our job to do. So in those two sides of us are very different on who we have to be as a person. So it's important to really try and get to know each other. That's why it's important to talk about the positive as well as the negative things that are going on in each other's life. But once the tour is done, sort of get together with your crew, get together with your band, see how everyone's doing, check in. It makes it for the drop to be less hectic, and it also shows that we're not alone in those feelings, and we're all experiencing that together. So.
And Dave, you spoke about visualization yesterday. Can you expand on that for us?
I have literally no recollection of talking about visualization yesterday.
Well, you were talking about, doing certain things to get away, to go off and just visualize or meditate for like a minute, turn your phone off, walk away, yoga.
Definitely. I use a lot of different tools myself, in terms of, I do exercise every day. I do some meditation every day. And that can be as simple as a guided audio meditation you keep on your phone. 10 minutes a day, just checking out from whatever's going on around you can literally reset the button and put you back in a good place. We have that internal reset button that a lot of us don't take advantage of. You can be having the worst day ever and just walk away from the situation you're in. And you need to have, like Ace was talking about, I know for me, when I get off a tour, I have enough hobbies and emotional roots at home that I can just get pretty quickly involved in doing stuff that isn't in any way indicative of being on the road. I go out in my garden, I do some woodworking, I mow the backyard, and that, the somatic feeling of getting my hands dirty and just getting right back into the rhythm of being at home, knocks the hell out of that, that post-tour blues that a lot of people feel.
Hey,
Paul.
Dave, 5-1, may I 1 sec?
Yep.
Yesterday we were chatting about sort of the monkey see, monkey do of good habits when we talked about doing something visual. Like if somebody sees you doing something, if you see the yoga, if you see the biking, if you see somebody doing something that's healthy, you're more inclined to jump on that bandwagon.
Now you've triggered the association. I was out with an artist and somebody was struggling. And I said, why don't the two of us just sit down and meditate? And I got my computer and there was about a 13-minute audio meditation. And somebody else noticed we were doing it and asked if they could join the next day. And by the end of the week, there were about 10 of us. And we just made it a daily thing. We just sat down and listened to a guided meditation. And it was great.
And Doug, really quick, unmute yourself and tell that bike story really quick.
That's a very common thing on tour. People will, what David explained there has happened on almost every tour I've ever been on. But yeah, somebody took one bike on one tour, and on a theater tour, a bike really opens up the city to you. You can explore. You can also use it to work out. It just opens up your days off. And the next tour, we had 7 or 8 bikes in the bus trailer, all hanging on the wall. We had to build a special enclosure for them because there's so many bikes. And good behavior is as infectious as bad behavior on tour. So, getting into being the leader of the tour, getting into good habits could force push your crew to really get into those same healthy habits.
Absolutely. And, I really do believe that if you give people an opportunity, they will go with what's good for them. It's like we all know what's good for us. So if we see somebody else embracing those good things that we know in the back of our mind that we want to do, we're going to do them. I mean, just think about the way that everybody's starting to talk about mental health openly. You hear somebody tell their story, it makes you feel comfortable about telling yours. If you see somebody taking care of their body and their mental health and their emotions, it makes you want to do it too. And it makes it comfortable because a lot of it is really not so much that you don't know what to do. It's just that you're not given the opportunity to do it.
Thanks, Janine. Hey, Paul. So you're on a lot of these big tours and these high stress kind of things. What are some small things that you do during the day to kind of like bring yourself down, to calm yourself?
The first thing is I try to make sure my job part, so everything from the moment I arrive on site until leaving, has a pattern to it. Helps on the technical side because then you can see kind of the ripple in the fabric when something's different, but also it kept me kind of on schedule with marks to hit during the day. And after getting through the mechanical of, the beginning of the tour and getting used to loading in and loading out, and those times got shorter, I started adding in personal little touch points. One being, really looking at food. I mean, after the first month, it was like, what is showing up at catering? What things work? Like doing some work there to see what's showing up. Another one is I would usually try to get away from the noise. I realized after about a month in that no matter where I was at during the day, I was usually around noise, including taking a break in the back lounge or sitting on top of a generator unless they have shore power. And I just kind of looked at the entire day's noise consumption and found that I needed to go away from the building, especially with conversations that just kind of tend to keep going on top of a case somewhere and the opener's blazing away and you're still getting beat up with low end. I would carry resistance bands, and when we're waiting around for the band between line check and sound check, I would be doing resistance bands, but happen to be underneath the stage, so I had tons of things to tie off to. We did have push-up wars during production rehearsals between kind of the backline guys that were in our area and the couple audio guys we had. The other big one was right before kind of during doors, I would get away and put some meditation music on and just quiet myself. And once I would get the tank kind of empty of the bad energy, I would call Courtney and actually be more on point to have a decent conversation. And then usually I would try to hit the masseuse before the show for the $1 a minute deals that they usually run on big tours. And usually those nights were my best show nights, just because all that tension from the day and this cable was bad, or someone didn't quite get the direction I gave them completely. that would just be flushed away, and I could focus on my downstage center.
I find the plank challenge to be a great team builder. Minute planks. Everybody drop and give us a minute plank. Brent, the plank challenge every day is a great way to get everybody on the floor.
Word
You
of
just have to
caution
make it fun.
with the massages, don't get them too close to stage time. Otherwise, you will be walking around like you've been punched in the face.
Yeah,
with
soup sandwich.
And no energy. Made that mistake once, won't do it again.
Yeah, I think it's really it is really important to focus on the physical movement, because we have a feedback loop, you guys. Like, it's if your body is in a positive like movement, like if you go outside, if you move yourself away from that place of sadness and being tired, and you physically put yourself somewhere else, your brain will catch up. There is a loop that's happening, and this is a physiological thing. It's not us just talking about anecdotes and it worked for me. Like, this is science, and it really does work. And so it's really important to actually just decide, I'm going to do something, and just go do it, because even if you don't want to right at that moment, you're going to be so happy that you did.
Awesome.
If any of us
I'll just touch base on some things, but what are your top 3 best practices to stay well, healthy, and together on tour? This goes to all the panelists.
Pick somebody.
Dave, why don't you go ahead, Dave?
Okay, thanks. The acronym HALT works for a lot of people. Don't get too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And for me, they go in order. If I miss a meal, I'm angry, and then I'm feeling very isolated, and then all of a sudden I'm exhausted, and eating a Snickers bar, or not a candy bar. I don't want to get chastised later. Something with some protein in it can get rid of that entire practice. That whole process of going downhill. Communication is a big one, whether it's somebody on tour that's healthy or somebody at home. Just keep that line of communication open if you need to vent about something. I know for me, the things that stay in my head seem a lot bigger than they actually are. And as soon as I articulate whatever's bugging me, it gets right-sized, and it's not nearly as bad as it was.
We talked about, hold on, before we move on, there's an important conversation to have with Dave about sleep.
Oh, well, the basics that once you're on the road and in the bubble go completely out the window. Eating 3 meals a day with something green in them, getting 6 to 8 hours of sleep a night.
When you said 6 to 8 hours of sleep yesterday, I'm like, really, bro?
Yeah.
So talking about the fact that we can't really guarantee we're going to come close to those numbers most of the time. Yeah. What do we do to fight that? How can we work?
How many of these problems could get solved if we get proactive and put a little preparation into it? Like yesterday we were talking about having a team of 3 or 4 people. There are 3 jobs, and if you got 4 people, you can alternate it out, and at least that person every other night you might get a full night of sleep.
Right.
There's got to be a way we can find that everybody can find a nap at some point.
We talked about staggering folks in the beginning of the day. You come in, start the day. You do the early, I'll do the early, or if my production coordinator is falling over, right, send them to the bus for a nap or to a dressing room or somewhere, just to keep you got to put a little teamwork into play to make sure that people are not dropping like flies.
A very wise man once said to me, you don't have to go back to the basics if you never leave them. And when you're on tour, like, oh yeah, I forgot to sleep last night. Like, how do we forget that? But you get caught up in the bubble. So just make a list of really simple things and stick to it.
And then you said something yesterday about for every selfie.
Oh yeah. Every musician I've worked with, and it should be for crew too, but for every selfie you're in and for every autograph you sign, take 1 minute out in nature without your phone. And you would be shocked at how quickly you can get grounded again and forget all the stresses of being on the bus.
Okay. Back to you, Jim.
Ace, what do you have for us?
I sort of talked a little earlier about it. Obviously the positive self-talk is important, and talking to others positively is important. I'll agree with David Sherman on the sleep, and getting out and being active. For me, I'm a yoga guy, cycling and swimming. So I try and do yogas on show days And when I do have an off day and have that opportunity, I try to hit a gym or find a pool, or, get out there in some nature. I make the call out and let people know what I'm doing, and I get them, invite them out with me to, and leave all the phones back for sure. And then
I loved that you talked about the geocaching app. I've never heard of it, and then I just looked it up after we talked about it yesterday, and I'm going to do it. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so geocaching is just something, an app I found. It is a thing that a whole community of people all over the world is involved, and they hide stupid little trinkets in these little boxes all over the place, in things like inside of a tree or inside mailboxes. And what I do is, if a guitar band has custom made picks, I'll take a handful of them, and I sort of drop them in for whoever finds it next, and I'll take a little plastic dinosaur or a sticker or something. And what it is you bring it up, it's a map, it shows you all these dots, and you just sort of pick one and you go for it. It takes me into neighborhoods I wouldn't have gone into before. You find the stupidest little things. They give you little clues. I remember one time I was in South Carolina, and there was a clue saying the eye in the sky. And I'm like, what the hell is that? So as I got closer, it was a fake little camera magneted to some sort of door frame. And you go, oh, cool, you get it. And you're like, oh, it's a little stick-on tattoo. Cool. And the things you find is so stupid, but it's not even about what you find, but it's about the journey, and just put your mind being present in the moment. You go around, you look, oh, look at that house. That's kind of neat. Oh, look at all over there. It allows me to take in the local community. And sometimes it'll take 5 minutes. Sometimes there's ones right outside the venue door. I found one in the alleyway, two stores down. So it's a cool little thing that I enjoy doing.
I love that.
Yeah, cool.
Great. Hey, Courtney, what do you have for us? What do you suggest?
Sure. So
Keep connected on the tour.
Yeah. Like Dave said, the first one for me is communicate. Communicate with your team on the road. Ask for help if you need it. Communicate with your family and friends back home. Ask them for help if you need it. And if you can't communicate with the outside world, communicate with yourself. Write it down in a journal or send yourself an email. Allow yourself to receive that help. I say help because, I could go on and on, but that's really the most important thing for me is, if you need help, find it and receive it when it's offered. Number 2 is being proactive. So Paul had mentioned that he's got a system in place for what he does on the tech side of things. That's just his way of being proactive, so that if a problem comes up, he can troubleshoot it immediately. Us putting notes in our calendar about how we're feeling, that's us being proactive in our marriage to make sure that doesn't fall through the cracks, to make sure that we're loving each other in the ways that we need to be loved. You can be proactive in all areas of your life. Stop waiting for the bad to happen and start getting in front of your life. You know what's going to happen on tour. It's Groundhog Day. So if you're stuck in a Groundhog Day and you want things to change, you're going to have to do something about it. And I'll let Paul go to the third one.
For me, to back up some of that communication stuff, is to build your on tour buddy or team for days off. I had a great bunch of people, a couple different circles to run through that would do different things on days off, and just digging in pretty hard to get to points where you can have some really hard discussions with somebody if you needed to, because 3 a.m. in Europe, or 6 p.m. in Australia, and you can't get a hold of your home support structure, you got to build it up, around you to start day one. And part of that's being proactive and really, not just showing up and doing your gig and hiding in a hotel room, but getting out.
Okay. Janine, what 3 things do you have for us?
And just like you said, getting out, Paul, I can't express to you guys how important it is to pay attention to getting sunlight. It physically affects your brain and all of your body functions. So vitamin D is extremely important. Go outside. You'll also get a minute to be still with yourself. Just take a minute to breathe. It can be as simple as just 1 minute outside. The other thing would be to drink water. I'm the mom who's always like, drink more water. But the thing about it is that it's one little thing that you're doing for yourself very often, and it gets you into a habit. And it's important to take things one step at a time so that you can build habits one at a time. And then the last thing is to just really be kind to yourself. Give yourself grace. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to give yourself the opportunity to be better every day. So if you go off the rails, just know that there's always a way to come back.
I think that's a great point. And I think as a tour manager, you can be responsible for creating, and you know, somebody's probably going to write this off as some snowflake shit, but create a kind, caring tour. And if they do go, yeah, I don't give a fuck. You are responsible for, to a certain extent, of creating the atmosphere on your crew. And if that means there's a toxic person on your crew that the issue can't be resolved, replace that person. You can, the bulk of your team, you can assist them in how they deal with touring by having a nicer, more pleasant working environment. And you can see that the difference between a pleasant touring environment and a top-down, stressed out crew where any minor infraction is punished. I've been on a tour with one and the other, and it's night and day. And tour is stressful, and it is important that people take their job seriously. But I think you have to give people the responsibility and do your best to maintain a fun, easygoing touring environment, and that will go some of the way to resolving some of these issues.
And Doug, I love everything that you said, and I also think it's important to let yourself feel all the feelings. So if you find yourself frustrated and you find yourself anxious and you're angry, let yourself be angry. Give yourself that time. Go off by yourself. Let yourself be pissed off at the world, because then you'll be able to physically reset and then actually get into problem solving mode to really rethink things to see how you can make it better. But don't ever push those feelings to the side and pretend they're not there. Let yourself feel all of them.
I think as a tour manager, we have the ability to create, we influence the culture of that tour, whether it be positive or negative. And I think it's important for us to, although we're talking about this, and this is great stuff, but as the tour managers and the leaders of any tours, we have to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. So although we are talking about, self-care and all that, we actually got to do it ourselves. We say, hey, you know what? I know it's, noon or whatever, but I'm kind of pissy right now. I need 20 minutes. I'm going, touring isn't rocket science. So sometimes it has elements of it, but at the end of the day, we're just a bunch of people trying to work together to put on the best show that we can. And we aren't able to do that if we're all pissed off at each other and pointing fingers and all that stuff. So we gotta, learn how to walk the walk the best that we can and lead by example. So, it's okay to be pissed off, but it's also okay for us to go up and say, you know what, I'm not going to give you my best right now. I need 10 minutes. I'll see you in 10. And that's what we got to do. And hopefully other people will see that. And when they're upset, they'll be able to follow suit. And we got to respect that someone needs that 10 minutes to themselves and knowing that they'll bring their best selves back in 10 or 15 minutes. So.
That's a really great point. And a lot of people don't really understand. It's like, people at home get to, work a certain set time and then they get to go home and recharge and go to sleep. We don't have that time. We are staying at the office 24 hours a day. And that adds up over time to a breaking point. So all these points are so important for us to kind of keep this conversation going. And as we kind of tail in towards the end of today, I'd like to see from everyone, all of our panelists, how can we take these concepts into our home life and our current situation? Ace, would you like to kind of take it off? How we can take these concepts and expand on it right here at home and kind of currently what's going on?
For sure. First, we got to identify what our problems are. If we can't identify, we can't fix it. You know, if you have a leak in your shower, if you don't notice it, it's only going to get worse, right? And that comes down to ourselves. But once we identified it, we need to do the research. So what I do is I go on YouTube and I put on motivational shit, every morning. So by the time I'm done my shower, I'm pretty stoked with my motivational, Tony Robbins and whatever not. But so when it comes to breathing, instead of being like, oh, I need to learn how to breathe while I'm on tour, well, let's ease into that, because you're already dealing with a lot of other new shit, meet new people and all that stuff. So let's take that time while we're home, especially COVID times, learn how to take that minute to meditate now, or to be present in the moment, because it's going to be a hell of a lot harder learning how to do that when you got all these distractions around. So use the time that we have now. Do your research. If something catches your ear, research that. There's what we're doing isn't new. So let's learn off of what other people are putting out there.
That's great. Hey, Paul, would you like to take it? I'd love to hear y'all's concepts as well.
She thinks for me.
Well, the other reason I'm stepping in here is because Paul has the fortunate opportunity of some potential work next month. And so it looks like he's leaving on Thursday for a month.
Mazel tov.
Very suddenly. Thank you. Didn't expect applause. This came very suddenly, and it kind of hit us in the face a little bit, because it's like, oh shit, what do? We thought we had until next spring before we had to face this again. So on a practical level, while you're home during COVID, now is the time to get that mental health check in. Now is the time, if you need to find a psychiatrist, if you need to find a therapy plan, get going on that now. If you don't have health care and you're unemployed, you can get Medicaid. How do I know this? Because we're on Medicaid right now with our unemployment, which means we're getting free health care. And you better believe that we are doing everything we possibly can to get our physical and mental bodies in check before he takes off again, because when he takes off again, he's going to be gone for over a year. So get in now, get in to see your doctors, get your checks in and going. Paul, did you have anything to add to that?
It just left me, but she said it. It just left me.
Oh.
I was so enamored.
Oh.
We were screaming at each other last night. Better at
Worked it out.
Dave, would you like to pick it up?
If I could just riff off of getting help, and then I'll add my own thing. And I don't want to speak for any other clinicians, but I know this year with so many people struggling financially that I do a sliding scale, and I'm more than happy if people are reaching out that we will figure out a rate that works for both of us. Significantly lower than if you're a platinum recording artist. We'll figure out a way that you can get the help you need. Number two, what I see a lot of people struggling with this year is, and David, you were kind of talking about how this isn't anybody in this industry. It's not just a 40-hour week job. It's a 7 days a week, but it's also your entire identity. I mean, most people that are on tour 10 months a year just don't have much going on outside because you just don't have the time for it. And so much of what I'm trying to help people with is get some emotional roots at home, get some hobbies, get some things, get some vocations. Because there's just no balance, and the number one way we're going to get some mental health in our lives is having some kind of balance, whatever that means. So you definitely want to figure out what works for you, find that rhythm and stick to it. Develop that identity outside of what the job is.
Thank you for that, David. Janine, what do you have for us?
I love what Ace said about figuring out what the issues are. So I think right now we're kind of forced to be in a place where we have time to think about the things that were working for us and the things that weren't working for us. So take that first step. Figure out, what did I love about my life? What did I absolutely, what do I not want to let go of? And then figure out about the things that didn't serve you and put yourself in that place. And then don't take yourself too seriously. Okay. Because I feel like a lot of these things, people make fun of health and wellness because they think it's woo woo and it's a bunch of crunchy, like vegans and the whole thing, but it's really so much more than that. And it can be so simple. It's really just about picking out the things in your life that bring you joy, just like Marie Kondo says, and keeping those and then throwing out the parts that don't serve you anymore.
I think we also need to kind of take the stigma off of people wanting to get better in mental health, because there has been a long time stigma associated with it. Because I know that years ago, and I probably still to this day to effect, I used to be one of the angriest people on the planet. I would just be pissed off. Oh yeah, I used to throw stuff. I would scream at people. And it was because I had some unresolved issues. I lost my parents when I was very young, and I never had time to grieve or kind of get with that. And once I got with therapy, I tell you, it calmed me the fuck down big time. And then also reading, about Buddhism, just trying to slow everything down, because when we're on the road, just go, 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 hurry. You're having to talk to 1,000 people in a day, and you just get to a point of it's like, I just kind of need to just shut it down for a minute, but you can't shut it down. So that's just my 2 cents, and I'm rambling again. But
well, you're totally right about not being able to shut it down, because our bodies are physically able to just keep going and go at 100%. But at some point, you're going to crash. I mean, I'm sure you have all experienced it, where like you have a really hard, work month, and then all of a sudden you go on vacation, but you get sick. That's your body telling you like, okay, well, I hit max and now I'm out. You blew the motor.
Many people get sick post-tour.
Or on tour.
Right.
I got shingles and had to quit.
Yeah.
That's all stress related.
Yeah. Before we wrap, I want to just roll it back a tiny bit to, I'm going to go to Dave and Ace specifically with the question from JP, our buddy from Scotland. When we get to booze, drugs, are more tours becoming dry for crew, talent, or both? What's the best way for TMs to run the most effective operation? Let's go to Dave first on that, and then to Ace, please.
Well, are they going more dry? I wouldn't say they are, but I think that it's the idea of being able to access sober support on the road is much better than it used to be. I've been on festival tours now that there's a 12-step meeting every night, and there'll be a sign and catering, and it's usually in a back dressing room someplace. It doesn't have to be out in the open, and people can retain their anonymity. But that didn't used to happen even 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's just gotten a lot more, which is fantastic. And with the advent of Zoom, you can find sober support everywhere, which didn't used to be a thing. I've been on a couple of dry tours that didn't go the way they had planned, so I don't know, that sometimes you're kind of forcing people into directions they're not ready for, which doesn't always work, and then they get resentful, and all of a sudden it makes more things worse. And I see Doug is nodding his head, so I assume he's been in that situation.
Yeah, and just before we go to Ace, I wanted to, as an extension of that question, I wanted to ask you, Dave, I wasn't touring in the 90s, and I'm asking this question thinking I know the answer. There has been a culture shift, at least amongst crew, predominantly, not a wholesale culture shift, but things are definitely different in regards to alcohol and drugs amongst crews now versus 20 years ago. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. I think that every time there's a significant loss, everybody kind of wakes up and goes, we really need to actually do something about this and change. And I think that's just happened so many times over and over again that we've got some momentum right now. And, some significant people have come out in terms of sobriety, which is great. It's never going to be 100%. And, like what I was talking about, this is a pirate ship, that was the way it was created and has been running for years. And that's what draws a lot of people to it. So it's never going to be dry. But for me, I talk about attraction rather than promotion. I will let people know what my deal is. You are more than welcome to come join us. We're thrilled to have you. And I've been on tours where people popped their head into a meeting and decided I'm not ready for this and left, and then maybe came back later, or after the tour was over, called me, which is all great. As long as the seed's planted that there's a way to do this, you don't have to keep living the way you're living.
Doug, I have been, like, I literally had a production manager say to me, there was a little bit of a dry sort of the tour isn't going to pay for alcohol kind of thing. And I had a production manager literally say to me, nothing says thank you at the end of a long day but a Gatorade,
Right. Yeah.
So,
my feeling on anything like that is as soon as you make it illicit,
right,
and we could get deep into this on
Yeah.
policy. But as soon as you make something illicit, it becomes more of a problem because it gets driven underground.
And
that-
you know, there are situations that happen in this particular industry where there might be a dry tour because it's part of what has to happen for the health and safety of the act.
Yeah.
And you just have to deal with that. And if you want to go get a beer on your own time, that's on you. I have seen those situations be put into place where it's a legal mandate, or a mandate that comes from the health and safety of a very, very, very vulnerable act. And if your act is that vulnerable, guess what? Until your name is on the marquee, your ass isn't in control. And it is not about the fact that you get your beer or your whatever, because we're here to support somebody else and that other person's mission. So, you know, it is a balance of trying to create a healthy environment for everybody that's on the tour, but you also are there to protect your act, and there's budgets to manage, and you got to keep people happy. You know, we can't piss the men off out of the gate. You know, that's not a way to go. I think that really wraps it all up. We want to thank our esteemed panelists for coming and spending some time talking about this. And we certainly want to let everybody know that comes and joins us and attends and participates to please take care of yourselves during this time. Please take the opportunity now to look after yourselves, because although we are not out on the road grinding, we're all definitely grinding our gears right now. It's really intense and it's really stressful. And now is not the time to not really be looking after yourselves and the people that you love. So thank you everyone for joining us in the chat room, and thank you to our co-hosts and our panelists.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And for all our students, anyone, you can always come to us as well. Like, this is an open space. If you have something that's weighing on you, we're all here for you. Especially with our special guests that are here with us today. They have incredible programs. Please do some research and look them up. And but we are here for y'all. And this is keep your head on right, and we're taking it one day at a time. But keep it healthy. And we'll be back on Thursday for Q&A. We're going to go into a live Q&A. We're going to kick off September. We've made it to September. So we will see y'all on Thursday. I know I had to take a deep breath for that.
September.
This life.
What are we still doing here?
Our little how do we put a tour together for March
Right.
has become
Yeah.
September.
Right.
But everyone have a great day. Thank you for being here with us today, and
Zoom
we'll
wave.
be back on Thursday.
Thanks for having us.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Bye.